At family dinner, my niece sneered, "We don't sit with your kind." They all laughed. What they didn't know: I own every property they live in. What happened next was beautiful. The moment those words hit the air, I froze. My mind short-circuited, processing the absurdity of what just happened, while the sound of laughter bounced off the walls of my parents' dining room. The whole room, my parents, my brother and his wife, my aunt, my uncle, were all nodding and chuckling, as if it was some inside joke they all shared. And Sophie, my wife, sat there with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, her shoulders tight, trying to swallow the insult like she had done so many times before. She didn't deserve this. None of this was new, but somehow, tonight it felt different. I glanced at Sophie. Her fingers were clenched around the edge of her wine glass, her knuckles pale. She'd heard it too, that barb, sharp and cutting. And as the laughter grew louder, I could see the walls inside her starting to rise. She was done. I could feel it. My parents, they were the Midwest traditional type, which was really just a polite way of saying they were quietly racist. They didn't say anything outright offensive. But the little comments over the years, the assumptions they made, it was always there, lurking beneath the surface. Asking Sophie where she was really from every few months, complimenting her English like she was some kind of foreign novelty, or telling me how brave I was for marrying someone from over there, as if she were some exotic creature I'd tamed. And now, my niece Brittany was taking their lead, making it clear that Sophie, despite being part of this family for years, still wasn't quite core enough, not in their eyes. Sophie, God bless her, just smiled. She did that a lot, smiling through the bullshit, the comments, the awkward silences. She was strong, stronger than I ever gave her credit for, but I saw it now. How every smile she gave was a little more forced than the last. She never spoke up, not out of fear, but because she didn't want to stir the pot. She had dealt with worse in hospitals, she would always tell me, and somehow that made this feel like it wasn't worth the fight. So, she stayed quiet. She always stayed quiet, but tonight, something in me snapped. I had spent years letting this slide. Years of tolerating the subtle racism, the constant microaggressions for the sake of family peace. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. I'd let it go, for her. Let them treat us like outsiders, for her. But tonight, as I sat there at that ridiculous table in the hallway, while the rest of my family occupied the main table with the good china and the flowers, I realized how much I had been lying to myself. This was not about peace. It was about my family's comfort at the expense of my wife's dignity. I squeezed Sophie's hand under the table, and for the first time, I didn't worry about making a scene. I didn't care if they all stared. I didn't care if they'd understand. I was done. As the laughter died down, I pulled out my phone. No one noticed at first, not until I made the first call. Denise, my property manager, picked up almost immediately. "Hey, Denise, it's Jake. I need you to start eviction proceedings on 3 properties. Yeah, tonight?" I glanced up. My parents were pretending to eat, pretending not to notice, but the tension in the room was thick now. Calvin, my brother, caught my eye and his face went pale. Patricia, his wife, looked at me with a mixture of confusion and annoyance. They had no idea what was coming. "I'll send you the addresses in a minute," I said to Denise. I hung up, and before anyone could say a word, I dialed Mitchell, my real estate attorney. This was happening. "Hey, Mitchell, Jake here," I said, my voice calm, controlled. "I need you to draft some papers for me. I'm transferring ownership of the property at 447 Maple Street. Back to the bank. I'll explain tomorrow. Just get the paperwork started. Thanks." This wasn't just about the dinner. This wasn't even about the comments. It was about every single time I'd let them disrespect Sophie and let it slide because I wanted to avoid conflict. It was about finally setting a boundary. A big one. And it was going to hurt them. But it would hurt me more if I kept letting it happen. I turned to my parents, who were still looking down at their plates. They couldn't even look at me now. They could feel the change in the air. "I'm done giving family discounts to people who don't appreciate it," I said, my voice steady. "Next month, Calvin, your rent is going up to market rate. That's $200 instead of the $400 you've been paying. You'll get the official notice tomorrow." My father's face went white, and my mother gasped. The room went completely silent. I turned to my parents. "Mom, Dad, the house you think you own. You don't. I own it. I've been letting you live there for free, because I thought family helped family. But apparently, I'm not core family, so I'm transferring the deed back to the bank. You can work something out with them. My mother started crying. She begged, but I had already made my decision. I turned to Brittany. You just cost your parents about $800 a month, your grandparents their house, and your uncle his affordable rent. Hope that comment felt worth it. Sophie stood up beside me, her voice calm as always. We're leaving, she said. We walked out of there without another word, leaving the cake and grape juice behind, knowing I had done what I should have done a long time ago. As we got into the car, Sophie didn't say anything at first. She sat there, looking out the window. But then, after a long silence, she spoke. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, I said, my voice quiet but sure. Your family is going to hate you now. They already didn't respect me. At least now they'll think twice before disrespecting you. She smiled a little. That was pretty dramatic. I'm a dramatic guy, I said. No, you're really not. That's what made it so effective. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing the right thing, not just for me, but for Sophie too. The drive home was silent at first. Sophie didn't say anything, and I wasn't sure what to say. I could hear the soft hum of the car's engine, the rhythmic sound of tires on the road. The world outside the window was familiar, but in that moment, everything felt strangely distant. I wanted to ask her how she felt, but I knew the answer already. She was probably processing everything that had just happened, just like I was. I focused on the road, my hands gripping the wheel a little too tightly. I could feel the tension in my body, a tight knot in my chest that wasn't going away. There was a mix of anger and something else, something heavier. Guilt. I had done the right thing. I knew that, but that didn't make it feel any easier. Sophie hadn't deserved any of what had just happened. I had let it go on for years, justifying their behavior, telling myself it was easier this way. But it wasn't easy anymore. And that night, I had drawn a line in the sand. Finally, Sophie broke the silence. I never wanted it to be like this, she said, her voice soft but steady. I never wanted to cause trouble. I glanced at her quickly, then back at the road. You didn't cause anything, I said. This has been building up for years. I've been letting it slide. Letting them treat you like you don't belong. I shook my head, frustrated not with her but with the situation. I don't know why I let it go on for so long. You were trying to keep the peace, she said, her voice still quiet, but with a hint of understanding. I get it, but it doesn't make it right. No, it doesn't, I agreed, exhaling slowly. I've always tried to do the right thing, but I kept hoping things would get better if I just stayed quiet. But all that did was let them keep treating you badly, and letting you suffer in silence. I paused, feeling the weight of those words. I'm done with that. Sophie was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing the edge of the seatbelt. The car's headlights cast a soft glow on her face, making her look distant, lost in thought. I could see the sadness in her eyes, but also something else. Relief. It was subtle, but it was there. She didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to pretend anymore. Do you think they'll ever get it? She asked after a while, her voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head. I don't know. I'm not doing this for them to understand. I'm doing it for you, for us. They may never get it. They may never see how much they've hurt you. But at least now, they'll think twice before disrespecting you again. Sophie nodded slowly, a small, sad smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. I'm glad you're standing up for me. I don't want this to tear us apart. It won't, I said firmly. You're the most important thing in my life. No matter what happens with them, we'll be okay. The rest of the drive was mostly in silence. But it wasn't the same kind of silence as before. This one felt more like a quiet understanding between us. We had each other, and that was all that mattered now. When we got home, I parked the car in the driveway and sat there for a moment, staring at the house. It felt different now. The house I had worked so hard for, the home where we'd built our lives together, it felt more like a sanctuary than it ever had before. We had our own space here, away from the toxicity of my family's expectations. Sophie turned to me as I killed the engine. Do you really think they'll come around? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly. But I don't care anymore. I'm not going to keep playing their game just to make them happy. We deserve better than that. Sophie smiled, and this time it was real. You're right, we do. We sat there for a moment, letting the quiet of the night settle around us. There was a sense of finality in the air, but it wasn't heavy. It felt like the beginning of something new. Something we had been waiting for without realizing it. The weight of the past few years, the subtle insults, the constant undermining, the tension at family gatherings was finally being lifted. And then, just as I was about to open the door, Sophie spoke again, her voice more lighthearted this time. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I think I might actually miss the cake. I laughed, the sound strange and out of place after the heaviness of the night. We can make a better one tomorrow, I said. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Baking? I said, holding my hands up in mock surrender. I've got the real estate thing down. Cake is next. She laughed, and it felt like the first time in a long time that we had laughed freely, without the weight of our family's judgment hanging over us. We might have left their dinner behind, but we were taking something more important with us. Respect. Boundaries. And for the first time, I felt like we were finally on the right track. By the time we got home, I was still replaying everything that had just happened at dinner. The look on my mother's face when I told her the house was mine, the way Calvin's jaw had dropped when I mentioned the rent hike. My mind kept going back to Brittany's words, the ones that stung in a way I hadn't expected. We don't sit with your kind. It was like she had just exposed the truth everyone had been dancing around for years. And the worst part was how casually they all accepted it. They didn't even flinch. Sophie had been quiet most of the ride home, but I could see the tension in her face, the way her jaw tightened every time I glanced at her. I didn't blame her. How many more times was she going to have to bite her tongue, to endure the subtle insults and backhanded comments from people who should have had her back? When we stepped inside, the house felt different. Not in the way a house feels when you come home after a long day, but in the way a space feels when something has shifted. When the air is thick with unspoken words. I set my keys down on the counter and leaned against it, trying to collect my thoughts. Sophie walked into the living room, her steps soft, like she was trading carefully. She didn't look at me right away. Instead, she stared out the window, arms crossed. The silence between us felt heavy, not uncomfortable, just full of weight. I knew she was trying to process just like I was. It wasn't just the dinner, it was everything that led up to it. Every single time we'd sat there, both of us pretending like it was fine. Pretending like I didn't notice the comments. Pretending like the awkward silences didn't affect her. She had always tried to make the best of it, always smile when my family made her feel small, always tried to prove that she belonged. But tonight, that all came to a head. I don't know what to say, Jake, Sophie said after a long pause. Her voice was soft, but I could hear the tension in it, like she was trying to keep herself together. You didn't have to do that. I never wanted you to make them feel bad. I shook my head, stepping toward her. Sophie, you've been dealing with their shit for years. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay. I'm done with that. I'm done letting them treat you like you're less than. She turned to face me, her expression still guarded, but there was something in her eyes, something that made me pause. But now it's going to be worse. They'll hate you, they'll hate me. We won't be invited to anything anymore. It's all going to fall apart. Maybe it should, I said, my voice steady. Maybe it's time for things to fall apart, so we can build something better. We've been walking on eggshells for too long. Sophie looked at me, really looked at me, as if she were seeing something she hadn't before. Something softer, maybe, or braver. She let out a breath, not quite a sigh, but close enough. I don't know, Jake. Everything I've tried, all the smiles, all the effort never felt like it was enough. And now I wonder if it ever would have been. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I moved toward her, standing close but not too close. It was enough, Sophie. You were enough. You didn't do anything wrong. They're the ones who've been making you feel like you don't belong. I reached for her hand, gently pulling her to face me. Her fingers were cold, but the tension in her hand started to ease as she relaxed into the moment. She had been so tense all evening, trying to make everything feel normal, trying to hold herself together for me. I never wanted to drag you into all of this, Sophie, I said quietly, my words coming out slower than I expected. I didn't want you to feel like you were fighting a battle you didn't sign up for. She gave me a small, tired smile. Well, you didn't drag me into it, Jake. I've been fighting alongside you all along. I just don't want to keep losing, you know. I nodded. I did know. I could feel it too, the way we had been losing bit by bit without even realizing it. Losing respect, losing our peace, losing ourselves in a fight that never seemed to have a finish line. And tonight, for the first time, it felt like we were finally standing up, not just for our marriage, but for who we were as people. Sophie looked down at our intertwined hands and then back up at me. So what now? She asked, her voice quiet but curious, as though she were asking more than just about the family situation. Now, I said, letting out a breath. No, we make sure this never happens again, and we stop letting people walk all over us. I'll fix it, Sophie. I'll make sure they understand that they don't get to treat you like this anymore. You deserve better than that, we both do. Her smile widened. The weight of the night not fully gone but at least lighter. I guess if we're doing this, I'll be right there with you. We stood there for a few seconds, letting the weight of our words sink in. Things were changing. Fast. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was carrying the burden of my family's expectations alone. We had a long road ahead, but tonight, I had finally set the course. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the coffee machine gurgling in the kitchen. Sophie was already up, as usual, preparing breakfast. The soft light from the windows filtered in, casting long shadows across the room. It was quiet, peaceful, nothing like the chaos of last night. I sat up slowly, feeling the weight of what I'd done, what I'd set in motion. There was no going back now. I rubbed my eyes and dragged myself into the kitchen, where Sophie was flipping pancakes, the smell of butter and syrup mixing in the air. She glanced at me as I walked in and gave me a small smile. The kind of smile that told me she was still processing, still unsure of how to feel about everything. Morning, she said softly, as if testing the waters. Morning, I replied, still feeling the remnants of the tension in my body. I leaned against the counter and watched her work. Her movements fluid, familiar. There was something comforting about this routine, something that felt like it hadn't been touched by last night's events. Sophie placed a plate of pancakes in front of me, and I took a bite. But it tasted bland. The sweetness of the syrup didn't even register. My mind was still elsewhere, on what had happened and what was about to happen. You really did it, huh? Sophie's voice was quiet, almost as if she were speaking to herself more than to me. You really made those calls. I nodded slowly, swallowing. Yeah, I did. They need to understand what happens when you cross a line. I've let them walk all over us for too long. But it's done now. I can't undo it. She was silent for a moment, and I could feel her eyes on me, searching for something. Do you think they'll come after us? Try to fix this. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair. I don't know. I don't really care anymore. They'll try to make me feel guilty, but I'm not backing down. This isn't about them. It's about us. About what's right. Sophie stared at her plate, picking at the edge of a pancake. It's just, I never thought it would go this far. I didn't want to tear everyone apart. But it feels like that's exactly what's happening. I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the doubt creeping in. She was torn, just like I had been. But for me, the line had been crossed. And as much as I hated to admit it, the weight of what I'd done didn't feel as bad as I thought it would. There was a sense of relief, of finally taking control. I reached across the table, placing my hand on hers. I'm sorry it had to be like this. I really am. But I'm done letting them treat you like that. I'm done pretending it's okay. Sophie looked up at me, her eyes softening. I don't want to be the reason for all this mess. You didn't have to do it for me. I did it for us. I said quietly. For our future. And you're right, we didn't have to go this far. But we've been dealing with their crap for too long, Sophie. And I'm not going to sit back and let them undermine you anymore. She nodded slowly, as if letting the words sink in. Then, with a small, almost rueful smile, she said, Well, I guess we'll see how it all plays out, won't we? I smiled back, but it felt different. It wasn't the easy, carefree smile we'd shared before. It was a smile that acknowledged the weight of everything that was happening. There was no turning back, and we both knew it. I stood up from the table and grabbed my phone from the counter, scrolling through the messages that had already started to pile up. Denise, my property manager, had already sent me a few updates about the properties, confirming that the eviction notices were being processed. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold through the screen. I had made my decisions, and now I had to deal with the fallout. The first call came in around 10 in the morning, just as I was finishing up my coffee. It was Calvin. "Jake, this is insane," he started, his voice a mix of frustration and disbelief. "Over a seating arrangement. This is how you're going to treat family." I didn't say anything at first, just let the silence hang there. I could feel my pulse quicken, but I remained calm. "Calvin, this isn't about a seating arrangement," I said slowly. "It's about respect. It's about you and Patricia, and my parents treating Sophie like she's somehow less than." "I've had enough of it. You're being petty," Calvin spat. "You're destroying everything we've built. This is going to ruin everything." I exhaled, shaking my head. "No, Calvin. You're the one who's been destroying things. I've been paying for your rent at below market rates for years, and this is how you repay me. By allowing your daughter to insult my wife, to disrespect her in front of everyone." "I didn't mean for her to say that," Calvin mumbled, his voice quieter now. "She's just a kid." "She's 15, Calvin," I snapped. "She knows exactly what she's saying, and you're letting her get away with it." I paused, taking a deep breath. "Listen, I'm not going to argue about this. The rent's going up, and if you can't afford it, you'll have to move. Simple as that." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Calvin's breath, shallow and rapid, like he was trying to process what I was saying. "I don't know what you expect me to do," he finally said. "We can't afford it. You're asking us to pay what, an extra $800 a month?" "That's right," I said, my voice steady. "And it's still cheaper than what you should have been paying all along." He sighed. "Fine. Whatever. We'll find a way to make it work, but don't expect me to forget this." I hung up without saying another word, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. I knew this wasn't over. It had barely even begun. The next call came from my mother. She was crying, her voice cracking with emotion. "Jake, I can't believe you're doing this. You're tearing apart the family. How could you do this to your own parents?" I didn't have the energy to argue. "Mom, I've been taking care of you for years. You think I haven't noticed how you and Dad treat Sophie? How you let your own daughter tear us apart with her words? I've done more than enough. You can't just take the house away from us." She sobbed. "It's ours, you promised." I felt my patience thinning. "No, Mom, you've never owned the house. I bought it for you, remember? And I've been letting you live there rent-free for years. But if you can't respect Sophie, you can't stay there anymore. The deed is going back to the bank." Her crying grew louder, but I couldn't bring myself to care. "Good luck negotiating with them," I said flatly. Before hanging up, I was done. This wasn't about family anymore. It was about boundaries. And it was about time my family understood that. The following days passed in a blur. It was like the world outside our home didn't exist anymore, just Sophie and me, dealing with the aftermath of everything I had set into motion. I spent the next few days working from home, sifting through property documents, answering calls, and making sure the changes I'd made were being implemented. I didn't have the luxury of second-guessing myself anymore, but it didn't make things any easier. Sophie, on the other hand, kept to herself more than usual. I could tell she was wrestling with the consequences of my actions. It wasn't just about the family drama, it was the fallout. The way things were now, she wasn't just standing beside me, she was standing up for herself too, and that had to be terrifying for her. She was a nurse. She knew how to handle high-pressure situations, but this was different. This was family. And family, as we both knew, had a way of getting under your skin. I woke up one morning to find Sophie standing in front of the kitchen window, staring out into the quiet street. It was a gray morning, the kind where the sky feels heavy and the air thick with the promise of rain. She didn't say anything when I came in, just stood there, her arms crossed, lost in her thoughts. I could feel the tension in the air, the way it had been since that night. It wasn't just about the decisions I'd made, it was about how they were going to change everything. "Sophie," I said, my voice breaking through the quiet. "You okay?" She didn't turn around right away, but after a moment, she let out a long breath and finally faced me. "I'm trying to figure that out." I swallowed, unsure how to approach this. I know it's a lot, but we're doing the right thing. I'm not sorry for what I did. You shouldn't have to keep tolerating their behavior." She nodded, her gaze softening, but there was a hesitation there, something I couldn't quite place. "It's not just about them, Jake. It's about everything. About us, and how it's all going to change." She paused, her eyes flickering away for a moment. I took a step forward, closing the distance between us. "I know, but we'll figure it out. Together." She met my eyes, and for the first time in days, I saw a flicker of something like hope. But it was mixed with fear, just like mine. We were in this together, but the weight of the world felt like it was pressing down on both of us. The silence between us stretched, thick and heavy. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was real. After a while, I broke the silence again. "I'm going to have to deal with the fallout. I know that. They're going to come after me. My parents will probably call again, and Calvin won't just let it go. But it's worth it, Sophie. I have to protect you. I have to stand up for us." She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with those eyes that had seen so much in her work as a nurse. Eyes that had seen people on the edge of life and death. But here, now with us, she was seeing something different. A future. A life where she didn't have to apologize for existing, for loving me, for being a part of this family. "I get it," she finally said, her voice low but steady. "I just need some time to process everything. It's a lot, and I don't want to be the reason they all hate you." I shook my head. "They already hate me, Sophie. That's nothing new. The only thing that's changed is that they can't use us anymore. They can't keep taking from us without giving anything in return." Sophie sighed, the tension leaving her shoulders for the first time in days. "I know. But I just don't want to lose you over this. We've been through so much already. This is different. This feels permanent." I stepped forward, gently cupping her face in my hands, letting my thumb trace the soft line of her cheek. "We've been through a lot, yeah. But we're still standing. And we're going to keep standing, no matter what happens with them. I'm not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere." Her eyes filled with emotion, and for a moment, I thought she might cry, but she didn't. Instead, she smiled softly and nodded, the first real smile I'd seen in days. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll handle it. Together." The weight of the decision I had made, the gravity of the consequences was still there. But for the first time in a while, I felt like I could breathe. We weren't just surviving anymore, we were living. Later that morning, the first call came in from my Aunt Kelly. She was upset, but she didn't sound angry, just defeated. "Jake, we need to talk about this," she said, her voice quiet, almost pleading. "You've gone too far. You can't just cut us off like this." I felt the familiar stir of anger rise in my chest, but I kept my voice even. "I didn't cut anyone off, Aunt Kelly. I set boundaries. There's a difference. I'm done being the family bank, done enabling behavior that disrespects my wife." "Well, it's not just disrespect," she said, her voice cracking a little. "It's family. You don't do this to family. Family respects each other," I said coldly. "And for years, you all have been making Sophie feel like she's less than. So no, I'm done." A long silence followed, the weight of her realization sinking in. "I didn't know it was like that," she finally admitted, her voice smaller now. "I should have said something sooner. I didn't know." "Maybe you should have," I said, the frustration in my tone sharper now. "But you didn't. And now we all have to deal with the fallout." The call ended shortly after that, leaving me staring at the screen, my heart still pounding. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. Tired of all the pretending, tired of carrying everyone else's burdens. I was done. For once, I was only carrying my own, but the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. The fallout had only just begun. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus on anything other than the fallout from what I'd set in motion. Every time my phone buzzed with a new message, I felt a sinking feeling in my chest. I'd made my decisions, but I wasn't prepared for how fast everything would spiral. The messages started rolling in, one after another. My family was reeling, trying to figure out what to do next, and every call was more exhausting than the last. The first one came from Calvin. His voice was strained, but there was an edge to it that was unmistakable. "Jake, you've got to be kidding. This isn't happening, right? You can't seriously be going through with this. You can't just destroy everything over a dinner." I sat back in my chair, the words cutting through me. I hadn't expected him to react like this. It's not about the dinner, Calvin, I said, trying to keep my voice even. It's about everything. You, Patricia, and Mom and Dad treating Sophie like she's somehow less than. I've been biting my tongue for years. But this time I'm done. Come on, man, he said, his voice rising. This is your family. We've got a lot more history than just some disagreements. I let out a long breath. Yeah, we've got history, all right. And I've spent years making excuses for all of you. But I'm not doing that anymore. I've been subsidizing your life for too long. I'm done being the family bank. There was a long silence on the other end, the kind where I knew he was trying to figure out how to get the upper hand in the conversation. When he spoke again, it was quieter, but with the weight of someone who had just realized things were about to change permanently. I don't know how we're going to make it work. You've been helping us for so long. Now, what? We're supposed to just figure it out on our own. I'm not your backup plan anymore, I said. You're gonna have to learn how to stand on your own. And if you can't, that's not my problem. The call ended with a sharp click and I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The weight of it all hit me again, but this time it was different. I wasn't second-guessing myself anymore. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I got a call from my mom. I could hear the strain in her voice even before she said anything. Jake, I don't know what you're trying to do, but this isn't you. We've been family for so long. You can't just tear everything apart over something like this. I leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling the tightness in my chest return. Mom, this isn't just about the seating arrangement or a comment from Brittany. It's about respect. You've all been disrespecting Sophie for years and I've let it go, but not anymore. She started to cry, her voice breaking. Please, Jake. Please don't do this. You're destroying everything. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like without your help. I gripped the phone tighter, my stomach churning. You never needed my help. You've just gotten used to it. But I've been letting you take advantage of me and I'm done. I don't think you realize what this is going to do to us. She sobbed. You've taken care of us for so long. What are we supposed to do now? I felt a strange calm come over me. You'll figure it out. You always do. Just like everyone else. But not at my expense anymore. The call ended with her in tears, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything else. I felt the finality of it all settling in. The consequences of my decisions growing clearer by the minute. By the time the phone rang again, I was drained. It was Aunt Kelly. I didn't know what to expect, but I wasn't ready for what came next. Jake, I just want to say I'm sorry, she said, her voice hesitant. I never realized how bad things had gotten. I know we've never really shown you and Sophie the respect you deserve, but I'm willing to make things right. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Aunt Kelly had always been there. But this was the first time I'd heard her admit that she had been part of the problem. It's a little late for apologies, I said, my voice flat. I've spent years letting you all disrespect Sophie, and now I'm the bad guy. No, she quickly backpedaled. That's not what I meant. I just don't want things to be like this. I don't want you to think we don't care. I don't know how to fix this, I said. I can't keep doing the same thing and hoping for a different result. We're done pretending. And I'm done pretending with you guys. She was quiet for a moment. I get it, she said finally. I just hope that one day we can all make things right. I hung up before she could say anything else. The apology felt hollow, too little, too late. It didn't matter now. The boundaries had been set, and there was no going back. The hardest call of all came next from Brandon. He had been the one person in the family who had always treated Sophie with kindness, who had never made her feel out of place. I braced myself for what he was going to say, knowing it wouldn't be easy. Jake, man, I don't know what to say, he started, his voice soft but genuine. I can't believe everything that's happening. I get why you did it, I do. But I feel like I should have spoken up sooner. I should have said something about how everyone treats you and Sophie. I closed my eyes, running a hand over my face. I'm not mad at you, Brandon. You're the only one who actually gets it. You've always been decent, and that's why I'm not changing your rent. There was a pause, and then he chuckled nervously. I don't know if I should thank you for that or just keep my head down and stay out of it. You don't need to thank me, I said. You've earned it. You've always respected Sophie. That's more than I can say for most of them. Brandon sighed. I can't imagine what you're going through. This is big, man. I just want you to know I'm here for you if you need anything. Thanks, Brandon, I said quietly. But right now, I just need to get through the next few weeks. I'll let you know if I need anything. After I hung up, I sat in the silence, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The world felt different now, and so did I. I wasn't sure if things would get better with my family. But I knew one thing for sure, they would never treat Sophie or me like that again. I had finally taken a stand, and no matter what happened next, I would never let anyone cross that line again. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling of everything I had known. I could feel the tension in the air whenever I went anywhere near my phone, knowing that another call or text was coming. Another argument, another disappointment. My family didn't understand. They didn't want to understand. They saw me as the one who had betrayed them, who had broken the unspoken rule that family meant never challenging the status quo, never setting a boundary that couldn't be bent. I was sitting at my desk late one afternoon, sifting through paperwork and trying to focus on something that didn't involve my family when the phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was my mother. I hesitated for a second, then picked up. Jake, she said, her voice tired, fragile, as if she had already cried herself out. I don't know what to say. I don't know what happened to us. I raised you better than this. I could feel the guilt start to twist in my gut, but I steeled myself. No, Mom. You raised me to be loyal, but loyalty isn't about letting people walk all over you. Loyalty is about respect, and that's something you and Dad forgot a long time ago. I know you think we've wronged you. She continued, her voice cracking, but we're family. Family should take care of each other. We shouldn't have to pay for our mistakes this way. I sat back, running a hand over my face. I've been taking care of you for years, Mom. You've been living in a house I bought for you rent-free. Do you think I forgot that? I'm not asking for a thank you. But when you ignore Sophie, when you let her be treated like she's not good enough, when are you going to realize that Ashish is my family too? She was quiet for a long time, and I could hear the faint sound of her breathing on the other end, the weight of the silence pressing down on us both. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I never meant to make Sophie feel like that. I don't know why I've never said anything before. Maybe it's because you were too comfortable letting things slide. I said, my words sharper than I intended. You don't get to fix it now by acting like you didn't know. The damage is done. Her voice broke again, but this time she sounded more defeated than angry. I'm sorry, Jake, I really am. I never realized it had gone this far. It's too late for apologies. I said, my own voice cold. You can apologize all you want, but I'm still following through on what I said. The house is going back to the bank. I don't know what we're going to do, she said, her voice faltering. Where will we go? How are we going to pay for everything? I don't know, Mom. Maybe you should have thought about that before. I'm done making excuses for you. You'll figure it out just like everyone else does. You're not special because you're my parents. You need to learn that. The line went quiet again. I could feel the weight of the conversation, of everything we had just laid out between us. There was no more pretending. There was no more playing by their rules, letting them use me to get what they wanted. After a moment, my mother spoke again, this time in a voice that sounded almost like a plea. I just want things to go back to how they were. Can't we just move past this? Can't we just let it go? I shook my head, though I knew she couldn't see me. No, we can't. I can't go back to pretending everything's fine when it's not. I can't go back to letting you treat Sophie like she's nothing. It's over, Mom. It has to be. With that, I hung up. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel like I had won. I just felt empty. I sat there, staring at my phone for a moment, the silence of the room pressing in on me. This was my family. This was the mess I had inherited by simply being born into it. A few minutes later, Sophie came into the room. She had heard most of the conversation from the kitchen, I realized. I didn't need to ask her. The look on her face said everything. She didn't want to hear it, but she had to. How did it go? She asked, her voice gentle but tired. I let out a breath, running my hand through my hair. It's done. I guess they don't get it. They never will. But it's done. Sophie walked over and sat down next to me, her hand brushing against mine. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, letting the quiet take over. We had reached the point of no return. There was no coming back from what I had done, no fixing things with my family. But at least, for the first time, I knew I had done the right thing. "I'm sorry," Sophie said softly after a while, her voice laced with guilt. "I never wanted you to have to do all this. I never wanted it to come to this point." I turned to her, my heart heavy with everything we'd been through. "Don't apologize. This wasn't just for you, Sophie. This was for us. For our future. I'm not going to let them treat you like that anymore." She smiled, a small, sad smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I don't know if I'm ready for the fallout." "Neither am I," I said quietly, "but we'll handle it. Together." The phone rang again, interrupting the moment. I checked the screen. It was my father. I took a deep breath before answering. "Jake." My father's voice came through, strained and tight. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're making a huge mistake. You don't just cut off family like this." I exhaled slowly. "I've been taking care of family for years, Dad. But I'm not going to keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. You're going to have to face the consequences of your actions, just like everyone else." His response was a long pause, but I knew what was coming. The same old arguments, the guilt, the attempts to make me feel like I was wrong. But it didn't matter. This was my decision, and I was finally standing by it. The weeks that followed felt like a strange mixture of quiet and chaos. On one hand, everything was finally out in the open. My family had been forced to face the reality of what I'd done. On the other hand, the weight of the consequences was heavier than I'd expected. I had drawn a hard line, and now there was no going back. Sophie and I didn't hear much from the rest of the family. After my last call with my father, they were giving us space, or maybe they were waiting for us to reach out first. I knew they were still processing the shift. They had spent so long depending on my generosity that the idea of losing that comfort, losing me, was a blow they weren't ready for. But I wasn't going to reach out. Not this time. They had to learn the lesson that I wasn't going to be their fallback anymore. If they wanted something from me, they would have to earn it, just like everyone else. I remember one morning, a few weeks after the dinner, when Sophie and I were sitting on the back porch, drinking our coffee. The sun was just coming up, and the world felt fresh, like it was starting over. Sophie was quiet, watching the birds flit through the trees, and I was lost in my own thoughts when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was my father. I hesitated for a moment, but then I swiped to answer it. "Jake," he said, his voice surprisingly calm, "I need to talk to you." I didn't say anything at first, just let the silence hang in the air. "Go ahead," I finally said. "You know I'm not happy with what you did," he started. "You know I think you're making a mistake." He paused like he was preparing for something. "But I think I've been wrong about some things." I felt a strange tightening in my chest. Was this it? Was this the apology I had been waiting for? "I've been thinking a lot about everything you said, about how I've been treating Sophie. And I realize you were right. I should have stood up for her more. For both of you." He sighed, a heavy sound that lingered. "I'm sorry for that." I leaned back in my chair, my fingers gripping the edge of the table. This wasn't what I had expected. This wasn't how I imagined this conversation going. "You can't just apologize and think it's going to be okay," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You don't get to keep disrespecting Sophie and then act like everything's fine. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. I can't." There was another long silence on the other end of the line. "I know," he said quietly. "I know. But I'm trying, Jake. I really am. I can't undo what I've done, but I want to try to make it right." I was quiet for a moment, processing what he was saying. This wasn't the apology I had expected, but it was a step. And maybe that was all I could ask for her. "I'm not asking you to undo anything," I said finally. "I just need you to see us. See Sophie for who she is, and stop treating her like she's an outsider. If you can do that, then maybe we can start over. But not until then." "Okay," he said, a softness in his voice I hadn't heard before. "Okay, I'll do that, I promise." I hung up without saying another word, and as I put the phone down, I felt a shift in the air. It wasn't a resolution, not by a long shot, but it was a start. Sophie had been quiet through the entire conversation, sitting across from me, watching the way I handled it. She could tell I wasn't ready to forgive yet. But I wasn't as angry as I had been before. I wasn't holding on to the resentment that had been eating at me for so long. I was tired of carrying that weight. "Do you think things will ever be the same?" Sophie asked softly, breaking the silence. I looked at her, the soft morning light reflecting in her eyes. "No," I said. "I don't think they'll ever be the same. But maybe that's okay. Maybe things don't have to be the same to be better." She smiled a little at that, and I could see the relief in her face. She didn't have to worry about being disrespected anymore, not by me, and hopefully not by anyone else. For the first time in a long time, it felt like we were on the same page. It felt like we could finally move forward. The family stopped calling as much. My mother sent a card on my birthday, but it was a hollow gesture, the kind where you can tell they're just trying to keep up appearances. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say anymore. My boundaries had been set, and if they didn't want to respect them, that was their choice. Brandon reached out a few times. He was still a part of my life, still someone I trusted. He apologized again for not speaking up more forcefully at the dinner. I told him there was nothing to apologize for. He had never treated Sophie badly, and that was what mattered. Eventually, we stopped hearing from the rest of the family altogether. They stopped inviting us to gatherings, and we didn't miss it. I didn't miss the awkward glances, the half-hearted attempts at small talk, the feeling that I was walking on eggshells just to keep the peace. That peace wasn't worth it. Not anymore. We started spending holidays with Sophie's family, either flying to Manila or hosting them here. Her parents were warm, welcoming, and treated me like their own son. Not because they had to, but because they genuinely saw me as family. Her siblings video called us every week, just to chat, just to check in. That was what family should be: respect, love, acceptance. 6 months later, I closed on another rental property, a duplex near the university. Sophie had suggested we rent it out to international students at fair rates. Give them a good landing spot when they're new to the country, she said. I liked the idea. We were working with the International Student Office to make it happen. It felt good to be helping people who appreciated it, people who valued fairness. My real estate portfolio was doing better than ever. Running my business based on market rates instead of family-favored pricing had been the right call. Who knew? Patricia occasionally posted passive-aggressive things on social media about family loyalty and forgiveness. I muted her, but Brandon would send me screenshots of the posts. We'd laugh about it. It was pathetic, really. Brittany graduated high school last month. I sent her a card with a $50 gift card to a bookstore. A small gesture, but it felt right. She had been a kid, and maybe she had learned something along the way. She was going to community college, studying social work. Patricia, of course, complained about it in the family group chat. I didn't care. Some people never learned. I had learned one thing through all of this: you can't buy respect with generosity. You can't keep giving and expect it to be enough. Respect has to be earned. And now, I was finally getting the respect I deserved. Sophie was still a night shift ICU nurse. Still saving lives, still dealing with people who couldn't see past their own prejudices. But now, she wasn't just putting up with it. She was living her life on her terms. And I was right there beside her. One day, about a year after everything had gone down, my dad called again. "Jake," he said, his voice softer this time, less defensive. "We were hoping you'd consider coming to Calvin's birthday dinner next month. It wouldn't be the same without you." I paused for a moment. Then I asked, "Will Sophie be seated at the main table?" There was a long silence on the other end, and when my father finally spoke, I could hear the hesitation in his voice. "Of course." I thought for a moment, then replied, "I'll think about it. And I probably won't go. Some bridges are better left burned, but it was nice to be asked properly."